Good evening. I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting of the ISD 191 Burnsville-Egan Savage School Board. The date is October 10th, 2019, and the time is 6:30. I'd like to start by welcoming our substitute student representative, Savannah Christensen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome our audience. Thank you for joining us on this lovely rainy evening. Always appreciate having folks tuning in. And Director Hume, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will start by approving tonight's agenda. I will take a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Director Schott. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Courier. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Turning to the information portion of our meeting. I'd like to start, before I introduce our presenters, I would like to acknowledge that we are overlapping purposes tonight. Up until now, we have focused on the recommendation to close 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. Tonight, we take a deliberate and brief pause to focus on element number 3 in the consultant's recommendation, which is to market and sell Diamond Head and relocate staff and programming to the empty middle school. Our discussion tonight about this recommendation is designed to give staff the guidance they need to conduct research, compile information, and then come back in January prepared to have more in-depth discussions on this point. Looking ahead to our next regular board meeting on October 24th, the board will resume our focus on school closures, and we will remain focused on school closures until a decision is made in December. It is our responsibility to be transparent as a district. I invite our community to tune in on October 24th to receive the same information that the board will receive and leverage in our school closure decisions. As is standard practice, all reports and information received tonight and on October 24th will be televised, recorded, and posted on the district website for public consumption. I invite everyone to tune in. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenters, Brian Gersich, Lisa Ryder, and Dr. Teresa Battle. Welcome.
We all sit there. Go to the next one. Thank you, Chair Alt, board members, for giving us this opportunity to give you some updates this evening. And thank you for the introduction by Chair Alt, is kind of setting the framework for this evening's presentation. We are going to just start with a brief summary of where we are with the facilities alignment process and timeline that is specific to the recommendation of closing 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. Then segue into some of that information about Diamond Head and that portion of the consultant's findings. And then certainly a big focus tonight is gathering those feedback and comments from board members as a part of this process to make sure that we are preparing the board with the appropriate information and are gathering up the questions that you're looking for answers to, or at least data to, so that we can provide that in future sessions. Just from the perspective of looking at what has happened since the previous time I was at this table and giving some updates about our facilities process, certainly we have begun gathering feedback from our community through our focus group process, as was outlined and explained about a month ago. We've had 4 focus groups thus far. We had one at Eagle Ridge last Wednesday, October 2nd. We had a little over 100 people in attendance with us who filled out our feedback form with about 80 to 85 feedback forms from Eagle Ridge. This week on Monday, we had our second focus group that was at Metcalf Middle School. We had probably about 80 in attendance, and we gathered about 55 feedback groups from that team. Tuesday of this week, we did have our community focus group. It was a smaller group of about 6 to 8 people that joined us, but highly engaged. And would also like to note that many of our community members that have been invited have been present at our middle school focus groups as a part of it. As just one example, not to forget people listing them off, as there were a number in attendance, but when the very first night in Eagle Ridge, it was very clear that the mayor of Savage was with us that evening, as was Representative Hunter Cantrell. So again, there were a number of people that were invited also to our community session that have been engaged partners in this process. So we have appreciated the presence of those partners. And then last evening, we did have a focus group at Nicollet Middle School that was attended by about 100 people as well. And we had about 85 to 90 of our feedback forms completed that evening also. All of our buildings have now also completed. Our principals were facilitating the same type of information, albeit somewhat modified in that they probably skipped over some of the slides that weren't as relevant to staff, but giving staff the same opportunity to be invited to see the information that the consultant had prepared, as well as offer feedback on the exact same feedback form. So that has been done with all of our sites, and invitations sent out to all of our staff members at those sites. We are in the process of gathering student input, again, from an age-appropriate level. All of our middle schools and high school principal have been working with student groups to gather feedback, and they have to have that feedback back to me by the end of next week. I gave them a deadline of getting that before the MEA break. And again, that was a response to a discussion that would happen at the last board meeting and looking for and reminding us of the need to make sure that we were getting student input as well. Community input continues to come in via those focus groups, but also from the fact that we have available on our website a significant amount of information, namely the full facility study is on our website, our guiding change in principles documents, as well as a link to the feedback summary so that anyone right now who wasn't able to attend one of our focus groups can go and give that feedback. We did have some discussion just earlier today about the grade reconfiguration portion of the facility study recommendations. That was that recommendation also from the consultant about realigning from PK5 schools to the PK2 and 3-5 sites. We'll have a more complete summary of that discussion and recommendation, as well as all of the research and data that was used as a part of that process, just because it was happening just a few hours ago. We're just not prepared to give all of the summary details on that one, but just knowing that that is something that's going to be forthcoming as well as a part of that discussion. And again, as mentioned, the resources, just for those who are interested, are on our website. In looking forward, just as some additional reminders, coming up next week, we have our last 2 of our focus groups coming up. On October 14th, on Monday, we have one that will be facilitated in Spanish, and October 15th, facilitated in Somali. Much appreciation to our cultural liaisons who are helping to prepare materials in those respective languages, as well as getting out to our community invitations to join us for those opportunities. And then you'll notice some flexibility time there between October 21st and the week of October 28th, again, so that we can get the information that has been collected to our consultant, have an opportunity for them to review that information and determine if there are additional needs to gather information. We have had one meeting of our design team, and we can, of course, bring that back as well as needed. A reminder, the design team is with our building principals, as well as 2 parent representatives from each of those sites that came together so that we have a multi-stakeholder group to give feedback about the process. And certainly, again, those venues are potentially helpful both now as well as in the future when we get into implementation stages as well, to continue to have that communication from our families. Then when we get into the week of November 4th, that really would be our team making sure that we have everything we need to prepare that recommendation for the board, again, working with the consultant as a part of that process as to what he would need, with additional potential meetings of the design team or the admin team, depending on what those needs might be. The critical dates, though, as we've been trying to communicate those with the public, November 14th is when the board would see that recommendation, the board and the public, I should say, because that would be at the board meeting that night. That is related to those elementary schools and the middle school. Again, by statute, the need for a public hearing, should the board decide to go down the road of accepting those recommendations and putting forward the potential for schools to be closed, which would then have an ultimate board action on December 12. At least that is obviously what the current schedule calls for in that process. Just one other note, when we're talking about just our timelines in general, because it starts to weave itself into this, to make sure that you're aware that we are also working right now with members of our principal group and our administrative team to help stress the importance of communication and being prepared for information that would be announced on November 14th is going to cause some stress for some of our families, for some of our staff, and for potentially some of our students as well. And so we are working right now to develop that plan, which is somewhat an internal plan beyond just the implementation, but more just about the fact that we're a human service profession that want to watch out for the emotions that might be coming as a part of the announcement here. And so we did talk about how there may be one set of messages in planning that would be very relevant to potentially 3 schools that would be named as a potential recommendation to identify the sites to close schools, and then others that may also have additional need for a message about there may be others coming to our site or other boundary lines that are redrawn, so making sure that everybody is kind of getting the kind of message and support that they need. So we're meeting diligently to make sure we have a deliberate plan for what that can look like, and utilizing, again, our principles, but continuing to stress to them the importance of leadership at a time like this and being informed and engaged and helping support our adults in our buildings who are going to help support our students in our buildings. But just wanted to make that note because it is somewhat kind of inside of this timeline, certainly because of the information that's going to be coming out. And then what I'm looking for here is also just what kind of information would be prepared for October 24th, so you get an idea of what we would be presenting to you at that time, and certainly making sure that if there's something missing that you're giving us feedback as to what else we might be preparing for that presentation to you. So again, just running it down quickly, talking about, again, a bit of a review of the process, as well as taking a little bit about the reflections of the process thus far, any positives or negatives or things that went well or things we might do differently, as well as just kind of the next steps. Talking about the focus group and starting to then summarize some of the information. We will have our focus groups completed. And so again, we can talk a little bit about the pros and cons of what went through that process, talk again about total participation, but also start to get into the themes from the discussion and feedback in particular, and what we're hearing from our community as people have taken a lot of time to engage in that conversation. And those board members who were had a chance to join us did see, the gallery walk and the posters of information that helped people summarize their thoughts and perspectives. So again, getting captures of this can certainly give you a visual as well as a summary of kind of the data and things that we're gathering. Again, talking about a review of the timeline. Including both the decision-making timeline, but by the 24th, starting to flesh out some of the implementation timeline, so that if we end up having action to close schools, we're starting to talk about what are truly, we had a rough draft of a timeline with some things fleshed out in that guiding change document. We have to start getting into some specifics and some more detail within that, which can include some timelines that would talk about the need to change boundaries. And the redrawing those boundaries and what those timelines might look like. Then also, again, I mentioned before, an update on the reconfiguration of grades and what that conversation led to with our administrative team today. And then just some other general items that might be of interest or that you might want to talk about as well. The last thing I guess I just wanted to note was, as I shared with our administrative team this afternoon, things are really starting to get real for our families. And again, we have to be cautious of that. And I still remember back to the first time we started this conversation and Dr. Battle articulated the fact that these are people's memories and emotions, and we are a human service profession as educators, so we need to be watching out for that. I would also understand and respect that you as board members, as I've articulated to the groups, as we started the focus groups, are probably getting approached by people, and they might be asking for your opinions. And I understand it's very difficult at a time like this for people not to have answers, but know that we've tried to communicate that you're gathering information and that by design, you're probably not going to discuss a whole lot until you have an opportunity to discuss as a board. And I would just, again, encourage as much as possible, as difficult it is, to continue to defer to the process and the fact that we do have a consultant that's working through this, and to maintain that objectivity, waiting for decision-making time until that time comes through. And again, the recommendation's coming through on November 18th, but there's a lot of opportunity then for that feedback and for people to give that directly to you as a board as well. So just a couple of comments, just because it did come up during those focus groups, and we did try to make some of those statements. Oh, shoot, that was supposed to come in with the next step. Just hit one slide. Those are the comments for that particular slide, I think, so.
You want to sing again?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. I should.
So as part of the facility study, there was a recommendation to market and sell DEC, Diamond Head Education Center, and relocate staff, programs, and services to a closed middle school. Due to the need for us to first focus on the decision around the closing of schools, the timeline for board consideration will be after December 2019. We'll take a look at a few of the facts in the next few slides here that have been gathered thus far to assist with this consideration. Diamond Head Education Center, a few facts about it. It was built in 1971, 140,000 square feet, and as has been noted in the facility study, the cost per square foot in utilities for this particular building is $1.14 per square foot. Who houses here? There are 125 employees that house in Diamond Head Education Center, and they include departments that are included on this slide. Aside from the departments which address the function of the school system, we have our student enrollment serving our families as they enroll in the district, and our littlest ones at birth to 4 years are served by our early childhood special education team, along with our community education early childhood education programs. Community education, adult education, and senior citizen center are also housed at Diamond Head Education Center. Our senior citizen center is through a partnership with the city of Burnsville. Our business office as well includes the many support departments that are also housed at Diamond Head, serving our students daily with technology, transportation, and meals. That gives you a flavor of what's all in here. We want to talk a little bit about the fact that there are some opportunities for external groups to utilize the facility here. And as that happens, oftentimes there's some rental income that does come from that as well. As you can see, on an annual basis, the internal and external needs do fluctuate depending upon our professional development program or schedule and the programming that is planned for use of the space. Therefore, you see a range that's shown on the slide for the last 2 years. External rental, it does bring in additional revenue to the district, as you can see here noted as well. Pardon me. Community education uses a good portion of the space at Diamond Head Education Center, serving many needs within our community. I would like to share a little information of how many are served for the various programs. So our child care program, Ready to Grow and Ready to Learn programs, serve the youngest of our community with between 60 and 100 families participating in summer and school year programming. We serve over 100 families year-round with our preschool programming at Diamond Head Education Center for all students. Our senior 55-plus programs bring in about 7,500 registrants annually, and our partnership with the City of Burnsville Senior Center sees over 18,000 visits annually by our senior citizens of the community. Adult basic education serves over 1,600 students learning English or obtaining their GED or certifications offered through adult education. And in our general community education classes, we see a range of 450 to 600 hours of courses, which annually that will usually have around 6,600 participants. We wanted to take a look also at the 10-year plan to give you a sense of what it is that we anticipate might be needed here at this particular building. And so as we took a look at the, just last month, we received an updated plan of the 10-year for long-term facility maintenance. And I did a search through that of everything that was Diamond Head Education Center. We have, during 2022-2023 school year, a plan, our plan is to address $1,424,072 of projects. These are estimated numbers, including the need to re-roof the building. I'm going to now turn the presentation over to Superintendent Dr. Battle.
Good evening, Chair Alt and members of the board. I will tonight share information from consultation with the 3 cities we serve, Burnsville, Eagan, and Savage. As you know, one of our key values is partnership, which means relationships and action that empowers learning for all. We are responsible for serving the children and families in the 3 cities, and so it is very important for us to work on initiatives such as our facilities realignment process. So first, I'd like to thank Burnsville Mayor Couts and her city officials, Eagan Mayor McGuire and his city officials, and Savage Mayor Williams and her city officials. So in consultation, all 3 cities either have a completed or are working on a 2040 comprehensive plan. So they have strategic plans which will guide their work for 10 years. We first start with the city of Burnsville and their current and future planning. The 2040 comprehensive plan for Burnsville is a little over 500 pages, so we have provided links to each of the city's plans. So for Burnsville, they focus on land use, economic and redevelopment, housing, environment, community enrichment, transportation, and city services strategies. Burnsville is projected to grow by almost 7,000 additional people and 3,000 households by 2040, resulting in a population of 68,500 and 27,600 households. During that time, Burnsville's role as an employment center is anticipated to grow as well, with over 7,500 jobs added by the year 2040, which will total 41,900 jobs in the community. You will find additional information in the report. These are some of the highlights. Also, the city of Burnsville's current and future planning includes some redevelopment projects. So in the heart of the city, there are 2 projects for all ages at market rate. The first project is a 137-unit building known as the Maven, expected to be open spring of 2020. It will also include 2,000 square feet of retail. The second unit is known as Gallery on the Parkway, and it is expected to be open spring 2020. In additional, there will be in the spring additional 172 units for all ages market, and that could be fall 2020 or spring 2021. Also in the works is 134-unit senior housing, memory care, and assisted living known as Havenwood of Burnsville. Expected completion is early winter 2020. And then a 275-unit all-age building known as Rise on Grand. Expected completion summer, fall 2020. In the long range, north of 42, which is long range 20 to 30 years out, 100 units at County Road 5 and 136th Street. Portion affordable. Also working with an agency and a private developer. More of the short-term 1 to 5 year plan is really additional housing, parking structures, hotel, entertainment, and some upgrades to the Burnsville Rapid Transit Station. The city of Burnsville, as I just mentioned, really looks at the transit. And so for the Orange Line, all-day service every 10 minutes, which will have stops in Richfield, and Eagan and West St. Paul. And they will have additional 2 stations ready in 2021. This is very good for the city because it's good for employees to get off in Burnsville. and to have those additional stations is something that they do seek. Moving to the City of Eagan, their 2040 plan is still in development. They have a list of projects that have been recently submitted, which is the first step. Please know all of these requests will need to go through a formal review with the Metropolitan Council for acceptance and then back to City Council for formal adoption. All of these projects are in a temporary holding pattern as the City of Eagan is close to gaining final approval of its 2040 comprehensive plan. So they are in the very early proposal stage, and this will require, as I mentioned, additional actions that will include rezoning and acceptance of the proposed development plan. Here's a list of those draft projects. First, the Preserve, apartments at market rate, Nichols Park, affordable apartments, Ballantrae, apartments market rate, and a portion of the Imagine Theater project, apartments at market rate, and Cedar Ridge apartments mixed use. Please remember, these are draft proposals, not approved. Next, we go to the City of Savage for their current and future planning. The District 191 section of Savage has much land already developed. The Savage City Council has zoned vacant land by City Hall for mixed use and residential development, and this represents approximately 40 acres. The District 190 side is called Rose Hill. It does include a bluff that runs across City Hall that has been zoned for mixed-use development. Savage also looks at the impact of transit in their planning, particularly the Dan Patch line. They have announced they have one additional stop for Route 49 along of the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. Very happy. That line would cross Savage 8 times a day or 6 times a day and never stop, and now they stop. So very pleased with that addition. And now I'll turn it over to Executive Director Ryder, who will share some more consultation we've had with the City of Burnsville.
Thank you. We value very much the opportunity to collaborate with our community leaders, and the members of the City of Burnsville staff were able to share with us the approach that they often take when they are looking at a sale or a lease of a property. So as the slide indicates, first is the assessment of the space, data and identification of projects within the space. Oftentimes, a request for proposal, which is a process when you use when no specific end in mind, but you're rather seeking proposed ideas and looking for a full proposal of those ideas or uses of the space. Or a request for quote, which is when you have a process where you have an end in mind, you kind of know what you're looking for, but you want to seek the best quote. These are tools that they've used and through the use of a professional service engaged to lead that process for them. And typically that process would take them about 120 days. Another tool that's often used is obtaining appraisals to gain insight as to what the property is worth as is, as well as what it is what is it worth if it is sold as land with the building demolished, and what might the appraisal be if it's being leased for just space. As mentioned a moment ago, these tools may be used by a professional service engaged to lead the process, but similar to the services that we already receive from Ellers Incorporated for our financial information, they have a division that is focused on the sale and lease of buildings, and particularly for cities and governmental entities. And so that is a professional service that could be an option for us to reach out to, utilize, and walk us through this process. How it looks in a school environment may be very different than what it might be in the city environment. So I was cautioned about that too, just to make sure that, we have different things to consider. So the suggested approach, in looking at what they have done on a routine basis and kind of laying that into what might it look like here for us, is for administration to engage in professional services for leading a process. So this last slide is an example of the process that might be followed, mirroring that which the City of Burnsville has used. when involving the RFP and the RFQ process. But since these slides were published, I have also had conversations with a member of the team at Ellers that the city put us in contact with, and regarding the approach that they suggest for school environment. And so it was thought that this might or might not be used, depending upon what you decided, after there's some conversation and dialogue around what it is that you're really looking for, to be using that space when all is said and done. And knowing that the sale or lease of property is not necessarily our expertise, it is suggested that the administration engages in a professional service for leading this process and helping to make sure that the board has the data that you're looking for and can make the decision then regarding sale or lease of any property that we may not be using for educational purposes as we move forward. And this concludes our report.
Great. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Well, with all of these links, I think we all have some homework to do in the next couple months. I will open this up for questions, and I think what we'll do is each of us, I'm sure, have questions that we want to ask, and we'll just do a round robin. So, Director Schatz, can we start with you?
Actually, I don't have any questions right now.
You don't have any questions? Okay. Director Hallwiger.
For that last slide that we were looking at, or sorry, not the last one, but are there just the two options for Diamond Head for selling and demolishing, or just leasing the space? Are those?
There could be many options. These were just ideas of what it is that the city has experienced and what they've seen. And they typically do use an RFP or an RFQ process for what their needs are. In speaking today with or was it yesterday, with the consultant, the message then is, it might vary. It really does require a dialogue to understand what it is that we're looking for and what it is that are the facts that we need to consider, because it's very hard to have this conversation until we even know what space is it that might be vacated. So there's just so many things that need to be considered, and our environment might look very different than that which the city works in.
Sure. Okay.
Is that good?
Yep, that's all that I have
you
right now.
Okay. Director Chester.
I have a couple questions. So I can't remember, it's under where you're talking about or giving us more information about the slide about Diamond Head, which is that, it has 140,000 square feet with an annual utility cost of $1.14 per square foot. Is there a way to divide that down in terms of what is actually programmatic use versus other space use? So what percentage of that cost is early childhood, what percentage of that cost is community ed? Because those are kind of like direct education pieces versus, like admin use or whatever.
So I'm hearing you ask if we can provide
A breakdown.
A breakdown of the square footage of the use of the building?
And the cost for each of those, So like, in budgets that I've worked with organizations to find out how much what is the overhead cost per program, you're kind of getting that, that space part in.
So it would be a prorated amount, so I would calculate the square footage for the various different areas, and then prorate the cost of utilities, because the utilities are just metered once in the building, so, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just so that we get a sense of how that's divided into, what would be considered academic enrichment and direct service to community members versus, business and admin or rental use.
Okay.
The other question I have, this is just really looking at, we're looking at an example of whether we sell Diamond Head or lease it. I'm curious if we're looking at other options too. So like, is this sort of the one thing that we're looking at because of just this recommendation? Or are we also looking at, is it cost effective to keep Diamond Head and shift things around and looking at like River Ridge and Cedar School?
Those are ideas.
And kind of exploring the many different options so that it's not so much that we're making a decision on this only thing, that we're really looking at the varying costs and benefits of shifting things around. and seeing if there's other ways to maintain programming, but get maximum use out of space.
Great, thank you. Director Hume.
I was going to ask a very similar question, so thank you for that one, Director Chester. But I am also wondering, and this probably isn't a question that can be answered tonight, I realize, but on the presentation, there were 140 families that currently, I think it's 140, that go to are in the preschool program here at Diamond Head. And obviously, one of the factors to consider is what happens to those students. Where would they be going to preschool if Diamond Head closes? I know there are lots of options, so that's something that I'd be curious to learn more about at some point in the future.
Are you good?
I might have another one, but you can come back to me while I try and find it.
Okay. Let's see, Director Courier.
I'm hoping we'll have a more robust discussion at another time, because there's lots.
And this is initial questions, just so staff has their homework and can come back.
Okay.
And in January, that's when we'll really have the in-depth
Okay.
conversations. Yep.
Do we still have a health clinic here?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a public health clinic or is it a?
It's a district.
It is a partnership in which they house here, and then it is available to the public for particularly those who are not able to afford to have healthcare coverage. It includes dental as well.
Building on Director Chester's points about we need to have a robust discussion about more than just Diamond Head and two elementaries and those kinds of things, because I think about our Egan site and our alternative high school and some of those spaces, and I'm the rep to 917, and we haven't talked about them at all, and they're big renters of our Cedar School, and I don't know what kind of discussions we've had with them. I mean, there is a big need for very robust discussions before we make major decisions on our next steps. So that's my comments now, and I may think of other things too, along with.
I just want to make mention, we do have a meeting scheduled next week with 917.
Thank you.
Director Miller?
Yeah, well, I'll start since we're out of my order, but you have that slide up, so it's perfect. I'd like a little clarification. I mean, the 100 families, 140 families, that's a pretty clear understanding. They're coming here and taking advantage of preschool programming. But when we start below that, we're getting into some pretty large numbers. Senior 55-plus program, 7,500 registrants annually. Does that mean we have 7,500 people here passing through the building doing some programming, or?
At any given, so throughout the year, I asked for community ed to give me a sense of, like, in their catalog, and they put out a catalog a couple of times a year, in which there are many different courses and offerings for various different age levels. So for our seniors or those 55 plus, there is some robust programming that is done, and with that, in an annual year, they have about 7,500 registrants, and they do run all of their classes with registrations, so they have a means to track those numbers. They may be duplicated, where someone's going to a few different courses, of course, but that's how many registrants they typically get in a year.
Okay, and the 18,000, what does that mean, a senior center visit?
So every day, there are visitors to the Senior Citizen Center, and they count exactly, how many each day came to visit today.
I see.
On any given day, it may be a different group of people, but
Yeah.
throughout the year, they're saying they have about 18,000 plus visits from various
Got
people.
it. Okay, that helps, thank you.
Yep.
And just an extension of that, it'd be interesting to know, I don't know that there has or is ever on an annual basis, are there any days where we fill that whole parking lot up with, and if so, if we're looking at alternative locations, will that be an issue? If it happens once or twice a year, it's probably not, you know, massive, we'll just have to deal with it. But if it's a regular occurrence, that's something we need to take into consideration. This is probably the largest, outside of maybe the high school, the piece of parking lot we have anywhere in a single location in the district, so. Then on to more things. I would like to just go back real quick to some of your opening slides, just clarification on something. The grade realignment discussion, you said there was a meeting a few hours ago. I think later you mentioned, I just want a clarification on who was involved with that and who's having that conversation. I think you said administration, but can you just elaborate? Are there principals in the room, or there?
Yeah, so kind of again, if I bring it back to that process that was outlined, I had one group that was referred to as the administrative team. So that would include all of our principals, and then also invited to that meeting were some of our directors. So Glenn Simon, Tom Umhofer, Stacy Sovine was able to attend.
Okay.
So again, it's a group of all of our principals. So we had representation, obviously, from all of our elementary, middle, and high school sites, and then as well as district level administrators are part of the conversation.
All right, that's good, thank you. And just, I guess, maybe a bit of a spoiler alert, so when you bring the findings and discussions, I will definitely be interested in, I know this process has been used in other districts, and so the results of that, who had, you know, these 5 districts have done it and it's been successful, or they've struggled with problems or whatever, that's going to be a question I know is going to come up. I'm just giving you a fair warning on that.
Sure.
And on the November 4th announcement on the 2 school, or the whatever schools it decided on, just to clarify, on November 4th, are we going to, I think I had that right, November 14th, or sorry.
Yep.
Are we just going to say it's school X and school Y, or are we going to also say it's school X, school Y, and therefore boundaries are going to, the kids from there are going to, you know, boundaries are going to have more to it? I mean, so people, if you're at school X or XY, your next question is going to be where am I going and all of that. Are we going to have more of a concise sort of expectation at that time, or is it just these schools?
It would be just these schools.
Okay.
I've had a number of conversations about where's the placement of that boundaries conversation with the consultant, because I think that's the logical question. If X elementary is closed, where's everybody going, and what's that reverberative effect on all the boundaries that he talked about? But through that discussion, his comment was, you should start your process with, are you closing schools, and keep the objectivity on that piece, and then bring in the concept of, if you make that decision, then do the boundaries in that order. Whereas if you're trying to do it and redraw boundaries beforehand without all of that information, you're making a decision before the decision has been made. And he said, from an organizational perspective, you need to take the time to first make the decision, should we do this based on the data, then redraw the boundaries. So I have the expectation that we may be starting to draw up outlines for if we close, then this is the timeline for it, but I don't have any expectation of having specifics about what
Okay.
those would be.
Very fair answer. My suggestion would be that we preamble that announcement with that very statement. Otherwise, you'll be on the phone the next 3 days.
Yep.
And back to this building. Has there been any thoughts about contacting, I guess you'd call it post-secondary program, the collegiate programs in the state, about any interest in the building? In the budget conversations, I made a point of saying that, you know, we talked about some of the college and the school credits that we offer and stuff, that, you know, if budget constraints come down the line, we need to be in the business primarily getting kids through high school, and hopefully we can add college to that mix, but that's not our primary objective. But at the same time, it's a huge, I mean, we're in this boat because of enrollment issues, and it's a huge draw. It would be a massive draw to this community if, imagine, Normandale had a campus right here in Burnsville, you know. So, I mean, I'd be interested to know if there's been any conversations or exploring those possibilities or anything like that, and I would encourage that if there has not been. Again, clarifying as a board member, I don't want to be running Normandale Community College out of here, but I certainly would love to open the door to them and then, you know, have our kids moving back and forth between buildings even throughout the day and stuff. That'd be fantastic. So, and then last point I would just make is I completely agree with what Director Chester was saying. Is echoed here too, that I totally understand the enormity and massiveness of this project and the need to bucket it into silos so that we can deal with those appropriately. But let's not lose track of that there has been no decision made, and all of this has to go together as a totality decision. And at this point, again, we've said it many times, but again on record, everything's on the the block, so to speak. And so you need to consider how those mixes go together, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I have some questions and some comments. So, thinking big picture, I think, and fellow board members have alluded to this, that we need to think about the cost of moving programs and people as a result of this process, and that includes retrofitting buildings, moving costs, replacement costs. We should also know the cost of maintaining a particular building. And then also the cost benefit and programmatic benefits to proposed changes. So there has to be a financial and a programmatic benefit, I would hope, because we are trying to strengthen ourselves as a result of our facilities decisions. And finally, opportunities to partner, investigate opportunities to partner in using our empty schools rather than simply mothballing them. It would be a shame to have them left empty and not create some sort of value add for our community. Looking specifically at at Diamond Head, I completely agree. We need to also investigate. If we're talking about Diamond Head, we must talk about River Ridge. We must talk about Cedar School, where the alternative high school is. 917, absolutely. We don't know what the space needs are. Again, thinking creatively, all options on the table. I would be interested specifically, I know, in terms of what might be done with the Diamond Head property. I'm particularly interested in getting more information about leasing land for development versus selling land for development. And I think for the district specifically, we need to think in terms of risk, need, and opportunity. We need to think about how this change will help our students, will help our financial situation, and what benefits might exist for the community. How does leasing land for development versus selling land impact our financial outlook, both in terms of facilities use and additional revenue to support our students beyond what we receive from state and federal funding? In terms of revenue streams for the district, what caveats might exist in terms of using the proceeds from selling or leasing this land for development? Is there, and I guess this is just kind of not knowing what we don't know, are there differences between the two options which make one preferred for us over another in terms of logistics, in terms of finances, in terms of timing? I don't know if it takes the same amount of time for one option as it does another, and we would need to think about that too. For the district and the community combined, we again would want to think about risks, need, and opportunity. We need to have a clear, as others have said, we need to have a clear view to where programming and staff and students would be landing and when. And if the Diamond Head property is either sold or leased or no longer available for our use, what do we need to consider in terms of development and effective use of the land? And I think the information that that is shared with us from each of our cities will help inform that. I have a feeling probably more conversations will be needed in terms of that to make sure that we're not going rogue. And I'm assuming, and I guess we would want to have this confirmed, but regardless of whether we sell or lease the land for development or whatever option we come up with, if the use changes, I would assume that the property would then go back on the tax rolls. And if that's true, what kind of, what might taxpayers expect in terms of a reduction in taxes? Is there any way to get to that? What else do we need to know about mixed-use development in Burnsville and the known need for market rate versus workforce housing? Specifically, the boardroom, this is kind of a unique space. And we want to make sure that we can still conduct our meetings with the efficiency and the transparency that, that we all expect. So if the boardroom were moved to a space within 191, where might we move it? What elements of the boardroom could be repurposed? What would be the cost, the estimated cost to outfit a modest boardroom with audio and visual and a dais if we no longer have this space? And then finally, just kind of thinking outside of the box, what thought has been given to partnering with the city of Savage and or the city of Burnsville in terms of possibly using their council chambers for our meetings? Because I know in Vision 191, we were thankful that the city of Burnsville allowed us to use their council chambers, and I don't know what might be possible there for us. And that is it for me. Yes, Darcy. Yep, Director Schatz.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. So even though community ed is one of our larger uses of the building, and do we, even though they're a 191 program, do we have any separate leases or agreements with that organization that would be affected by a move out of the space? I don't know if they, even though they're a 191 organization, is there any separate agreements that's made with that organization? You know, so do they use a certain number of rooms, that kind of thing? What kind of expectations or accommodations would we need to take into consideration with
Can
that?
I paraphrase for a moment?
Yeah.
So am I hearing that you're wondering about the community education programming that is happening? Are there agreements that will be impacted if they are not housed here but housed elsewhere? Such
yes,
as senior center with the agreement between the city and us, or the clinic with the agreement between us and Park Nicollet?
Exactly. What actual contracts or leases or, things like that
Okay.
are impacted by a possible move out of the building?
Sure.
I have a question about the facility, a couple actually questions about the facility rentals piece of it. And actually, while I pull that up, the preschool that's here, this is the preschool that's in addition to all the ones that are at all the schools. I mean, this is just another site for preschools.
It is
right?
another site, and it does offer a little bit more because we do have the childcare right here as well. So it offers a little bit different look at things for some families that want to see like a 9 to 3 program.
Okay.
And it gives it a little longer where they move from the preschool into the childcare for part of the day too.
Okay, so, is that essentially the only difference between it and the ones at the schools?
The VPK programs are functioning similarly. It's just the wraparound that is provided here. And I believe we have a program also out here at Bishop that provides a similar type wraparound service.
Okay, so we do have that.
Yep.
Okay, some similar models with other schools. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to cross these off here. Okay, so the rental, slide 15, I think or page 15. So this says, first of all, my question is, what is being rented? What are the external rentals? Is it mainly meeting rooms, things like that? And then in addition to that, and if you don't, certainly this is, come back with more information, whatever, but what's being rented? And then what functionality of those rentals are required? So are people renting the meeting rooms because we have the technology available, things like that? And again, sort of thinking about how would we offer the same sort of, could we offer the same sort of rental options at another site, things like that, but, and what would be the cost of, duplicating that? This is a pretty amazing technology space, and so what would that feasibility be of renting that, if that's truly what people are using in the rentals? And do we have, so this is the external rentals, this is non-191 staff, is that right? Is that what external rentals means?
Correct. We do not show here the usage by community education programming or our own meetings, professional development, or our own trainings are not included in that slide.
And how much of that do we do?
Well, so that's a little bit trickier to track, but we can try and get to that.
Outside of community education? I think it's more, yep, and because we have pretty solid numbers on what community ed uses and, you know, things
Right.
like that, right? And so, again, what sort of space would we need for internal professional development, meeting space, and things like that? And then my last piece, again, about rentals is this slide here, does this mean that the 665 hours is fiscal year 19, and 2632 is FY 18?
Yeah, they're relative to the order there, so
Okay,
yes.
all right, just want to make sure. And so this means that we made $6,000 on 665 hours of rental time? Okay, and so that's $9 an hour, is that what our rent, that's what our rent is?
Well, so it depends on the space.
Okay.
So the facilities rental guide it basically lists out like a meeting room space is this much. If there's technology involved, then there might be an additional fee. If the hours in which they're asking for it, say it's on a Sunday and they want to do a homeowners meeting for one of the housing places in the city, they'll come here, but if it's on a Sunday, then they might have to bring in a custodian, so they have to pay extra there too. So it does vary based on the permit.
Okay, and so this is the average?
This is the average.
average.
This is just giving you a
total.
a sense. Yeah.
Okay. And so then so it's, because it's $6.80 for FY 18. So fiscal year 19 is what we're in. Now, are there already rentals for FY 20 that are?
Yeah, it is being utilized quite a bit here in 20. We don't see like a standard routine rental happening here at this time.
Okay.
We did note that the 19 is lower from 18 as a result of how much we internally use it, and then is it really even available for external
Okay.
rentals? So that can shift things, and depending upon what we have going on. So if you think about some of the programming that we've been doing in the evenings, or the meetings we're holding even for our conversations, you know, those take up some time across our district, not necessarily always here at Diamond Head, but you get what I'm saying there.
Right, and so does the district actively market these meeting rooms for rentals?
Can we do more? I believe so. We do, we have a facility coordinator. That position was more formalized about 3 months ago or so. And she does a phenomenal job of working with our renters, and so we find that happening across the district. We bring in the most funds for rental in our gym spaces.
Yep.
It's just, that's how it is. That's what's used the most. And so that isn't necessarily something that's available here at Diamond Head for gym space. So it's rarely rented here for any gym space, because what we have is very unique to probably more smaller ages than even
Right,
elementary.
the gym space downstairs, right?
And
The
there's
first
there's
floor?
one also in the early childhood special education area too, but it's very small.
Yeah. Okay, so the coordinator's position job is to really to coordinate facilities across the district. 'Cause
Yep,
they do
across.
Yep, and
Yep.
so their job really isn't the marketing, is so much it is the booking requests and things.
I would say she spends so much of her time just managing the permits and the questions
Absolutely.
and issues, that there isn't a lot of time available for her to do truly marketing,
Yep.
and we do not have anyone dedicated just for that.
Okay, yep, I absolutely believe that, yep, and so that's my question about how much this is what the usage is,
Without
and what
much-
opportunity is still available, for things like that, so. All right, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Director Courier.
Thank you, Gerald. I think our district, Mayor Williams was in the second graduating class of Burnsville, so the district has sort of been formal for approximately 60 years. Now, I've been affiliated with the district 32 years. And only the last 4 or 5 years have all our administrators, central office, and all our community ed programs could you go to one place and get your work done? You weren't driving all over the district to talk to somebody or meet with somebody. And so one of my major concerns as we explore what to do with Diamond Head is, are we going to farm out our programs again and our administrators again to do business? So as we explore this, I just want you to know, I've lived through that. And so that's one of my concerns, is driving. And we're a wide district, my goodness. We're wide, east to west. So you can really load on the miles if you're a principal in one of your buildings. You're driving all over the district to try to meet with people. So that's a little editorial comment. I apologize for that, Chair Alt, but
Staff time counts.
yeah, staff
money.
time counts.
Yep. Thank you. Dr. Chester?
Yeah, so, I just thought of this, well, not just thought of it. Hearing that the cities have these 2040 comprehensive plans and that we're just looking at, this recommendation and we're thinking of the here and now, I want us to also, when we're thinking and making projections and recommendations of what this district should look like in 2040. So that this is not so much just an impact on this next school year or the next 5 school years, but what are we doing and what decisions that are going to be really impacting us 20 years from now is going to be really important, because what we decide now is going to really shift what we look like in the future. And then also I appreciated your comment about Brian, about the fact that this is going to really bring emotions out in the community, in our neighbors, and in our kids. And I just want to preface that all but one of us are parents of children in the district, and all of us have affinities to all the different, I would almost say almost all the different schools in the district as well. And so this is going to, it affects all of us individually as well, and we are keeping that in mind, knowing that this is not just impacting us, it's impacting the community.
Thank you. Dr. Miller, any last questions? No? Okay. I think the only clarifying question that I have, and it goes back to what Director Schatz was talking about in terms of space usage, I think about professional development for staff, and I'm guessing that that really is the bulk of what we use this space for. And so valuing that and wanting to make sure that as we work through this, that if we're able to find efficiencies without compromising what we're doing, or finding efficiencies and actually improving what we're doing, that would be beautiful, because I think clearly this has been a real benefit for our staff to be able to come here as a central learning place beyond the learning that they already do in their own schools. So we need to think about that as well. All right. So I guess we will, I think we've all had ample time to ask our questions. And I think I want to, on behalf of all of us, I know that we are so very passionate about our primary responsibility, which is, the K-12 programming for our kids and the learning there. And we also want to make sure, and I can tell from all the questions that we've asked, that we all care very deeply about maintaining all those other pieces of the pie that we do, and making sure that while we change our physical footprint, we really are doing that to make sure that we're maintaining and hopefully even able to improve what we're doing with our kids and with our community. And at the end of this, hoping that we alone are not just strengthening ourselves and what we're doing for our students, but wouldn't it be wonderful to look at and realize that we're doing something for the greater good beyond our school walls, and really drive home the community strong part of our mission. So this has been a really great dialogue and conversations, and the three of you we will know that you're doing your homework, and we will be doing our homework in terms of information that you've already provided us, and we'll look forward to coming back in January to discuss this in greater depth. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we will start, we'll turn next to Savannah. Do you have a student representative report?
I do.
Okay.
I don't know if this is on. First, I'd like to start with introducing myself. I'm Savannah Christensen. I am a senior at Burnsville High School, and I've been in the district since kindergarten. I started over at Hidden Valley in Savage, and I have been a part of this community my entire life. Going off of what our previous conversation was about, the students of Burnsville Strong, Student Council, and the Black Student Union, as well as other leadership groups in our high school, met with Principal Helke yesterday, October 9th, and we were able to listen to the presentation about why this reconfiguration of our school district is happening, being proposed, and allowed to ask questions to gain an understanding of this process, just as we did today. We were also asked to complete a survey at the end of the presentation for our input and our ideas as well. In youth service news, we had our Green Apple Day of Service on Saturday, October 9th. Many school groups, leadership groups, and sports teams participated and volunteered cleaning up our school campus. We are doing things such as picking up garbage, tending to our giving garden, and just overall making our school improve for the winter. Burnsville Strong created a United Against Hate poster, which we are planning on hanging in our main hallway following the recent hate crimes that happened in our community. This poster was created to promote a more united and positive community in our high school. During all lunches this week, we have had students coming and signing and writing positive notes upon the poster to remind us that this is a welcoming and respectful school environment. Excuse me. For a few other youth service events, on October 26th, there's going to be a Halloween bash held in the Savage Community Center. A lot of our student groups, including Student Council, will be holding events and participating with the kids that will be attending the event, as well as the Family Fun Fest, which is this Saturday, October 12th, which a lot of our students in youth service are volunteering at as well. The fall musical Once Upon a Mattress opens on Thursday, November 7th, and there will be a showing for senior citizens on Wednesday, November 6th, with the official opening night on the 7th. So there's a preview on the 6th. All students involved with the show have worked very hard on and off stage for the past 2 months, and we would love to see the community there as well. And that's all I have from Yodi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Board members, did we have any questions for Savannah?
Excellent job.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was
you.
great. Next, Dr. Battle will take the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Board Chair Alt and members of the board. Tonight, you will see a similar theme between me and our student representative. Tonight, I want to talk about how proud I am of the students we have at Burnsville High School. We talk about being community strong a lot because, of course, it's our mission, and our students are walking the walk. This past Saturday, 80 students and 12 adult advisors, mostly as part of student groups or teams, participated in Green Apple Day of Service at Burnsville High School, teaming up to provide more than 100 hours of work to clean the school grounds and prepare the giving garden for winter. And all of this on that cold, rainy day. This is just the latest and maybe most visible example of our students serving the community. In September, 117 Burnsville High School students invested their time and talents in providing more than 1,000 hours of service at 245 different service activities, including brain power in a backpack. That's providing a value of more than $26,000. Already, 3 of our students, 9th grader Enrique Calderon, sophomore Asher Geese, and senior Ryan McCundu, who was crowned for homecoming, have been recognized with National Community Service Awards for their commitment to others. I want to say a special thank you to Courtney Floback, who coordinates our youth service program through community education. She helps inspire students to find ways to give back and matches these students with opportunities. Our students are also leaders when it comes to important community conversations. Several of our students participated in and helped lead the Savage Community Conversation on Race, September 26. And earlier this month, members of the Burnsville High School Black Student Union attended the YWCA It's Time to Talk Forum on Race event, sharing their voices in dialogue on racism, equity, and inclusion, and learning new skills. Also on October 21st, 10 students will attend the student conference where they will share their perspectives on the future of public education and learn what it means for education to be integrated, equitable, and excellent for each student, all students. So there's no doubt our students are servant leaders, and we can all be proud of them and proud of the staff for their support and inspiration that they provide. And 191 is truly community strong. Thank you, and that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there board member reports? Director Courier? No? All right. All right. Then we will move on to the business portion of our meeting, to the consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. In the event a board member wishes to discuss an item, that item will be moved for separate consideration. Are there any items that board members would like to separate? Seeing none, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Director Miller, second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Chester. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. New business. We are being asked to adopt a resolution appointing judges, and it looks like Lisa Ryder is coming to the podium. Welcome back.
Thank you and good evening. This is the resolution that is appointing election judges. Our election will be November 5th, 2019. And at this time, it's required that there's at least 25 days before the date of the election that we must have a board-approved list of the election judges. So what you see attached is a resolution which lists all of the names of the various judges. We are going with one less person at each site scheduled from what we have seen in previous, the previous election we were involved in operating and functioning. The reason is just the anticipation of a lesser crowd, and we may have been fine having done so even possibly in the last election, but you never know these things, right? There are alternate judges listed for every single location, and they would be called in should they be needed, whether somebody is absent or if there's additional help needed. There are 2 students listed for every single site as well, and the idea is that they will have split shifts so that one will be there at any given time during the day. I'll read the recommendation.
Yes,
that the Board of Education adopts a resolution appointing election judges for the November 5th, 2019 school district special election, and we do need a roll call.
Thank you. So we will start, Director Schatz. Aye. Director Chester.
Aye.
Director Miller.
Aye.
Director Courier.
Aye.
Director Hume.
Aye.
Director Hallwigger.
Aye.
Chair Alt, aye. And the motion carries. Now, before we adjourn, I wanted to take note that we will be adjourning to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to discuss ISD 191's labor negotiation strategy. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So
Moved by Director Hume, second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Miller. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Let's take 5 minutes.